So a friend of mine turned me on to this kombucha drink, which is a fermented tea that has a little bit of a zing to it and has a lot of, I guess, healthful qualities for digestion and for the joints, and just a lot of probiotics and a lot of antioxidants and all of this kind of good stuff. So I've been drinking a little bit of it, but this stuff, it's hard to find in Lethbridge, and I can get these little bottles like this, but they're almost $5 a bottle, so it's a little bit expensive. But doing a little review online, I found out that you can easily make this stuff at home. All you need is a culture to start with. So I ordered a culture online. It cost me just like maybe $2 more than one of these little bottles of already made kombucha. And I'm going to experiment and try to make a gallon and a half of my own homebrew over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I've started off making a dark tea with a oolong. I went to the bulk barn and bought some oolong tea. It has a little bit of orange in it, but it's mostly oolong. And I guess they recommend you use oolong, or you use a black tea, or you use a green tea, some kind of a dark tea. That herbal teas don't work very well. So you have to make a tea first, and it's supposed to cool down to room temperature before you add the culture. So I made my tea, and it's not quite cooled down all the way yet, but I also need to have this cup and a half of sugar for this gallon and a half of kombucha that I'm going to make. I need to dissolve this, and so it's easier to dissolve when the tea is warm or hot than when it's cold. So I'm going to go ahead and move this tea into my vessel here. But yeah, it's about, I guess, a quarter of a cup of white sugar. You can buy organic white sugar. I just have regular white sugar in here. They say don't use honey, don't use brown sugar, use white sugar because it's less likely to have other bacteria and stuff like that that's gonna make your drink funky. So white sugar, and a quarter of a cup of white sugar per quart, and there's basically 4 quarts in a gallon. So this is a gallon and a half, 6 quarts. So I have a cup and a half of white sugar, and I'm going to add my tea to it. I've strained out a lot of the oolong and such already, but there may just be some pieces left in here, so I'm going to use a strainer and start adding my tea so I can dissolve the sugar into it. And this sugar is, I believe, what the bacteria and yeast are going to feed on as the kombucha is made. So I'll just quickly add this, as much of this tea as I can, or at least get a good part of it going here, and then I'll swish it around. Let's see how much of that sugar I can dissolve. I clean my glass vessel here with the same kind of cleaning agents that I would use if I was making wine in a carboy. Put the lid on this so that it's been cleaned. Of course, you want to sterilize it as much as you can. The yeast that's in the kombucha culture can deal with some it can probably deal with some contaminants, but you don't want a lot in there. You could end up screwing up your drink. Right, so the more sterilized you can have it, the better. Gonna add more. I think that sugar's already getting pretty well dissolved. So, swish it around a little bit more. Make sure that sugar's nice and dissolved. And then I'm going to pause the video here and come back when this tea is room temperature again. Alright, a couple of hours have passed actually since I left this, and it's still a little warm, but it's not too warm. I think now it's safe to add the culture. One of the things that we're going to add first is some vinegar, and typically I guess what you would want to put in is kombucha that you had made before. Some of your last batch you'd put in. So you put in half a cup per quart. So this has really right now probably about 4 quarts in it, realistically. So I'm going to put in at least 2 cups of the next best thing to a part of your last batch of kombucha, which is just vinegar. So a couple of cups of vinegar. And I guess you can use pretty much any kind of vinegar. You don't have to be particular. I'm actually going to go a little bit more than 2 cups. Almost 3 cups there. Add vinegar. And then I'm going to top up with a little bit of water. That's probably good there. Something like that. And now we'll get a look at the culture. So what they call these things is a SCOBY. And SCOBY is an acronym. I guess it stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So SCOBY, symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, SCOBY. So let's check out what I got. Alright. Yeah, you can see just, it's like part of a yeah, it's a SCOBY, alright. Okay, let me get a scissors, we'll cut this out. Symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So it's not a mushroom, per se, but it is a culture. There it is. So I'm going to put that, this is going to be my mother culture, into the tea. And now I'm just going to seal it up. And I'm going to let this tea sit for 2, maybe 3 weeks. We'll see how it develops. But I should see a new culture develop on the top of this, on the top of the tea, and once it's developed, then I'll know that I've got some kombucha. So stay tuned. This is an experiment. I've never done this before, so stay tuned. In a couple of weeks, maybe even by next week, I'll show you some development and we'll see how this goes.